There was a time when I'd get very easily triggered by guilt. At the slightest thing, I'd find myself racked with self-doubt, punishing myself, feeling like I had to make amends, like the smallest thing would make me blush and feel terrible inside. And over time, I began to learn that that guilt maybe was not mine, that I didn't deserve it, and I found some strategies to protect myself. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. My 7 tips for overcoming unwanted and undeserved guilt. So stay tuned and listen on to find out what these 7 tips are today. Hi, my name is Matt Fox and I'm a parental narcissistic abuse recovery expert. I work with people who've been affected by emotional neglect and narcissistic abuse to recover their self-esteem and their power. So let's dive right in with tip number 1, which is this true? You know, when you're made to feel guilty by somebody, you know, that can happen in lots of different ways, but you know, often it happens in quite subtle ways or less subtle ways, like, hey, you know, you should be really helping me right now, or sometimes you get extreme statements like, you know, you never help around here, or you never stay around, or what, you're going so soon, or you're already thinking of leaving, or didn't you like my food or my present? Those sorts of things can be very guilt-tripping, and they can quickly pull you into a sense of, okay, right, you know, I need to make amends now, I need to sort this out. It can be really, really difficult. So the thing to do is to stop yourself and say, well, is this feeling I'm experiencing, is it about me or is it about the other person? Is that person trying to exert power over me? Are they trying to get their emotional needs met in whatever way they can? And if it is about their emotional needs, then you might be able to separate and say, well, okay, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way, but actually, you know, it's not true. You know, I'd love the food, but I need to go now. Or I love the present, I'm really grateful, thanks very much, but I really still need to go now. So asking yourself, is it true? A really good first tip to getting out of the cycle and loop of guilt. Okay, tip number 2. Really get to know the feeling of guilt. So guilt is both a set of thoughts and a set of feelings. So if you can get to know the feeling inside you, where does guilt live in your body? Is it like a knotting in your stomach, or a sinking in the pit of your stomach? Or is it a tightening in your shoulders or your chest? Or is it just like a whir of thought? You know, what's happening? Have I done something wrong? Do I need to make amends? How can I make this okay? Oh, I'm such a bad person. You know, have I upset them again? So this can be the kind of the loop of thinking and feeling when you have feelings of guilt. So really get to know that feeling, and then it can start to act as an early warning system. It can really let you know, okay, this feeling's around, something's going on here. Is it true? Is it not true? And let's just sit with that. Okay, so tip number 3, just turning my page. Before I go on to tip number 3, tip number 2, there's particular language that people use with guilt, and I've touched on it before already today. And that's really about, you know, if you hear shoulds, or I need you to, or do you really, or you always, kind of those are good hints or signs maybe that somebody's guilt tripping you, and that there might be you know, something else to do here that isn't about them. It's just about looking after yourself. Okay, tip number 3 is about writing out the feelings. So, you know, guilt is one of the most difficult feelings, and you know, untended, it can tip into shame as well, which is, you know, really uncomfortable. Not that guilt's comfortable either, but if you can learn to tolerate the feeling, just to say, okay, well, this is just a sensation and a set of thoughts that I'm having in my body, in my mind right now, then can I write it out? You know, it's like, you know, the guilt comes, sort of rolls in like a mist off the sea. It catches you by surprise. But, you know, if you just sit still, the fog or the mist will clear and you can move away safely. If you try and walk your way out without being able to see anything, you know, then you get into trouble, don't you? So it's a good way to think about guilt as just another passing thought and feeling. Let it pass and see what happens. Okay, tip number 4 is about changing the thought. Okay, so we often have this illusion that things happen to us, and bear with me, I'm going to try and explain something that's quite difficult here, but it's true that external circumstances are happening, but all our experience is experienced from the inside out, right? Without your mind, without your thoughts, without your awareness, you wouldn't have any way of processing or seeing what was happening. So if that's the case, then if you create your experience, because all reality is happening from the inside out, then maybe there's an opportunity using your free will just to change the thought. Okay, I feel guilty. Well, maybe I can swap that out, which is with something like, I'm okay. I'm not guilty. I'm fine as I am. So just play with that and see if you can use your free will over thought. Doesn't matter if you don't, because it's difficult to control thoughts, and we can't. It's actually a losing game if we try and start controlling thoughts. But I'm talking about something slightly different here, which is changing the thought and just playing around with that if you can. Okay, tip number 5. This one's, I think, to be used with caution. It depends on the person. And tip 5 is batting it back. So what I mean by that is, if somebody says to you, you never do this for me, and it's not true, just say, well, that sounds like that's your feeling. That's not true for me. I know that I do a lot for you, or I help you out. The word of caution is, if you're saying that to somebody who's on the narcissistic spectrum, particularly at the more extreme extent, then they might not be able to cope with that batting back. It might unleash one of two things. It might unleash the attacking narcissist, the person who's going to really criticize you and really lay into you for daring to have that thought that this guilt doesn't belong to you, or it might be the kind of more introverted narcissist approach, which is collapse, oh, woe is me, oh, I'm so hurt, how could you think that, nobody really pays any attention to me, I'm always the victim in this situation. So the batting back, you either have to be in a very robust place where you can take some flack back, or just be sensitive to who you use the batting back with. Okay, number 6 is about creating an energetic force field. So this is something I do with my clients quite often, and what we do is we stand up and we imagine a circle around us, maybe. Well, it depends on how your boundaries are, but let's just say a foot or two around you. So imagine drawing a circle around yourself, and from the ground up comes a translucent bubble. It might be clear, it might have a colour. Just close your eyes and imagine what colour your bubble is. And that bubble is an energetic force field. Through that bubble, nothing else will pass. So if you imagine it, it'll protect you. And you can intentionally put it on whenever you go into a meeting with somebody who you find difficult. And just know that it's there with you now, forever. This energetic bubble to stop you being kind of affected by these negative emotions that other people might be projecting out towards you. So that's tip number 6. And then moving into the last one. So tip number 7 is, all will be well. Okay, having a bit of self-compassion. Knowing that this might be a struggle for you in the moment, just letting it be, treating yourself with kindness, knowing that this feeling is uncomfortable, but it will pass like every other feeling and thought passes. And if you're struggling with that, maybe just imagine yourself as if you were talking to a young child, if you have a child, or somebody else's child, if you have children in your life in some form, or imagine yourself back in the day as a child. And how you might talk to that child if it were feeling guilty. And if that's difficult, with a friend that is very close, that you're close to, how would you speak to them? With gentleness, with kindness, with compassion. So that, bringing that kind of attention to yourself when any feelings of guilt come up can be really powerful too. So that's it. That's my 7 tips for banishing unwanted guilt. If you found this video useful, please subscribe. There's a button on the screen now, or you can hit the subscribe button at the top. And head over to www.mattdfox.com, where you can find out more about my work to support people who experience narcissistic abuse. And you can also download my free report on the 10 steps to recovery from childhood narcissistic abuse. And finally, what did you find useful in this video? I'd really love to hear from you. Pop a comment in the comments box below, or if you have some techniques that are successful for you and have worked, I'd love to hear about that too. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for listening, and see you next time.